it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. I hunt reverse vampires. 5-point pentagram. Alright, we are back. Had to take a little bit of a break. Going through my past is mentally straining on me. Also, my memories jumble together. Well, I'll get to the reason for that later. So Armand's punk ass was dead now. Oh, it felt good. Really good. I knew I was different from my late friend Mark now. I knew I wanted to continue the fight. I slept like a bandaged up baby that night. Oh, the look on Armand's face before his head exploded was like an Ambien to me. The next afternoon I limped out with crutches to the memorial we were having outside. It was the first time me, Mika and Vaus had been together since the attack. We lined up with instructor, Raif, and a few others I'd never seen before. Lay before us were 11 graves with fresh dirt piled upon them. All my cattle mates and some staff. Behind them was a 3-foot-tall white marble column with a sculpted balance scale atop it. On one end of the balance lay a sculpted heart on the tray, on the other a sculpted feather. Both were weighed equal on the scale. The inscription on the column said, "Alas, in our eyes, you were found pure." I didn't know what all the symbolism meant at the time, but I got the gist of it. I mourned for Mark most of all. His heart was too pure to withstand the horrors of this life. He stood quietly as Raif spoke in an ancient tongue over the graves. Then a priest stepped up to read from Psalms. Oh, this blew my mind. Shouldn't a priest be shoving a cross in Raif's face, screaming, "The power of Christ compels you"? I guess things really were different from the movies, but I did see Vaus make the sign of the cross with the priest. Interesting. Vaus must have seen me looking, and he stared back at me. Mika was between us, her entire left hand a robotic replacement now. Well, she'd lost 3 of her fingers and said, "Screw it, just give me a whole new hand." "Maybe I should be made more often so I can get cool new arms and legs," he said dryly to both of us. "Yeah, then maybe you can get an actual personality too," Mika retorted without looking at him. After the ceremony, we were told we were moving to the final and longest phase of training. 3 more months of spellcraft, hunting technique, and field training. Well, we were finally told where we were, in Mexico, close to the Texas border. Every morning we went outside to sit on some bleachers in the hot desert. Only the merciful shade from an overhead tin roof to cool us. Now this is where we met our new instructor, Alejandro Domingo, a stocky and thickly muscled Mexican man with a killer mustache. Alejandro was surprisingly open about his past. Well, maybe we'd finally reached a place in training where they trusted us. He told us he was one of the founding members of the Zeta cartel, a US-trained Mexican police unit that immediately converted to being criminals when they got back to Mexico. Alejandro told us not everybody was down with Breaking Bad as soon as the training was done, but they had no choice. Alejandro was forcefully turned by an ancient Marv, who was the drug kingpin of the region. Alejandro's life only consisted of killing and maiming for his new master, therefore establishing the Zeta cartel. Between catching people on fire and piling people into mass graves, Alejandro was relegated to a small 1-bedroom apartment with only a bed, shower and fridge. He told of how he was forced to work out and clean weapons for 16 to 20 hours a day in his small room. No relaxation, no communication with anybody, no nothing. His Marv master only seeing him as a blunt instrument to hurt people with. Only calling him out when somebody needed to die, horribly. He went on to explain Amit, the organization I apparently worked for, found and killed his master, freeing him from his thrall. Alejandro also told us Amit was a peacekeeping force between the many Mavrip clans. He joined up with them after years of spreading death and misery. It was his attempt to, atone. He taught us tracking, interrogation, crime scene investigation, and tons of other spy stuff. Well, I excelled at all this, but was a little thrown by some of the tactics, like how to torture someone for info or how to get the drop on the cops if you were being arrested. It was hard for me to admit that I would be considered a criminal in most of the places I went. Oh, and I got my leg back. It still looked like a metal leg, but I could feel it. One thing I didn't excel at was spellcraft. The way it was explained to us was very bare bones. Some people had connection to magical forces by means that were not disclosed to us. If you didn't have a magical connection, you could still use finite magical items, though. I only had luck with activating magical charms and items. Well, Mika was good at both, but Vaus was super wizard savant with everything. Mika went on to tell me a little bit of her backstory. She was from Haiti, where the ruling Mavrib clan terrorized the people. Some ancient treaty kept Amit from interfering, but they could train independent contractors to protect the smaller villages from being preyed upon. Mika told me her plan was to go back to Haiti and take on an apprentice to defend the people. She came from a long line of badass hunters, also why she was so good with spellcraft. She'd been taught it at an early age, but even she said Vaos's ability was freaky. During one night, we all stood outside in the desert around a pentagram of salt with candles at the points. Alejandro was glowing as he led each of us individually in a chant to summon a lesser spirit. Spirits were a good source of information, like a CI. My summoning went horribly. At the end of the chant, all the candles went out, leaving us with only the light of the glowing Alejandro. Candles going out gotta mean something, I said nervously after moments of silence. Not always. Alejandro sat back and called Mika to be next. Mika's went way better than mine. Her candles went out, but a dark mass had appeared in the pentagram. Mika nodded her head, as if she was hearing something, her eyes tearing. When the figure disappeared, she told us it was her late grandfather. She said he was proud of her and told her his sword was buried for her to retrieve when she got back to Haiti. Next up was Vaus, and oh boy, what a show his was. At the end of the chanting, the candles burst forth blue flames like blowtorches. A massive cloud materialized with two shining purple dots for eyes. Your noble's heart calls out to me. I will devour you entirely once it matures. Came a growling voice in all our heads. A lowly human doesn't need such power. Alejandro stepped forth and began chanting, trying to banish the apparition. The entity's eyes flashed a brilliant purple, causing Alejandro to collapse in pain. Vaus stepped forward to take his place, removing his shirt to reveal a pentagram tattooed over his heart. A giant scar ran down the center of his chest, as if from surgery. I then realized I'd never seen Vaus shirtless. And we'd just supposed he took his showers separate due to thinking he was a better class of person than us. The pentagram on his chest began to glow hot red as Vaus spit Latin phrases like curse words. It took a while, but the purple eyes faded and the black mass disappeared. Once again we were left in the darkness, the glowing Alejandro getting to his feet. This happens sometimes, Vaus said sheepishly. The first time I'd ever seen him not extremely confident and cocky. Oh, what's a good Catholic boy like you doing with a pentagram on your chest? I asked. The pentagram is a symbol of power. It's not inherently evil. It depends on the will of the user, he answered curtly. Well, that was pretty cool, Micah said. I've never seen a purple-eyed demon. Oh, he must be big time. It's not a demon. It's something far worse, Vaus replied cryptically. Well, this event officially ended the class for the night. Alejandro was visibly shaken by what had happened. On my walk back to the hangar, I was lagging behind everyone. Taylor! I heard a voice call from far away. I turned to look out in the darkness. It was Mark, looking pale and sad. Don't trust Ma. Ask about the tracking spell." His voice echoed in my head, and then he was gone. I kept it to myself and pondered the meaning. I knew, whatever it was, Mark was looking out for me. And finally we reached the end of training. Rafe and Alejandro met us all in the small PT room to give us our first mission. "Your first mission won't be far from here, and Alejandro will accompany you to babysit, and for unfinished business," Rafe spoke. Once our teams had eliminated the Mavrib Master over the Zeta cartel, this left a lot of young Mavribs running around with free will. We've recruited or eliminated most of these lieutenants, but one is stationed up in a nearby village. "His name is Conrad Avila," Alejandro continued for Raif. "We received special forces training together. When he turned, he was relegated to being a sicario, like me. When our master was killed, he decided to make his own pack of mouths under his control. He has successfully turned everyone within his town, with the exception of human lieutenant. All are feral, half turned under his mind control. He's killed any ambassador Amit has sent. We'll infiltrate and kill Conrad, hopefully freeing as many under his control as we can," Alejandro finished. "How many half-turned?" Vaus asked. 30 to 40, Raif replied. There were collective gasps from all three of us. "You will be armed with state-of-the-art weaponry and with a highly trained Mavrib to accompany you," Raif said, a little angry. "All three of you have faced this enemy and survived. Where's your backbone, your Amit pride?" "We can handle this," Vaus said, like a teacher's pet. Later that day, we were driving towards the target town in an unremarkable white van. The inside was kitted out with all sorts of weapons and goodies. All four of us decked out in black BDUs. I guess we were going to infiltrate at night. Alejandro was the only one wearing something different, a rubbery black form-fitting bodysuit with pouches and pockets. It kept him from glowing through his clothing like he normally did. He had a hoodie and black mask that could completely conceal his face. The mask was blank except for two round glass eyes, looking very ghoulish. "The local gangs and police must provide humans as food to Conrad for protection," Alejandro said as he placed a map down between us on the bench. "The main road runs up to his villa, mostly guarded by humans, but the town is infested with half-turned," he said as he ran his finger along the map's road. "We must infiltrate the villa and kill Conrad, but if he is alerted, he will bring a swarm of half-turned down on us." He turned to point at Vaus. "That's where I need my best fighter and shooter to be a stopgap between the town and the villa. If the horde is alerted, you must mount a defense on the villa walls." Alejandro pointed to a grenade launcher and M60 in the weapons rack. "Nice," I heard Vaus say under his breath. "Conrad is a devout worshipper of Santa Muerta. He's rumored to have a priestess living in the villa. That's where Mika comes in if we need to combat her," he explained. "Me and Taylor will go in for the kill. Are you okay with killing humans?" he asked me point blank. I guess I have to be. If we have to kill humans, at least let it be human trafficking assholes," I said back nervously. I was hoping we could just solid snake our way through the villa and get that silent assassin rank for just killing Conrad. Well, sorry guys, I know I promised my first mission in this chapter, but there was a lot more setup than I realized, and nowhere seemed like a good place to stop. I'll crank out the next part quick. Let's just say, things don't go solid snake during the fuster cluck of a first mission. My hunt reverse vampires. Watch your six. The infiltration started at night. All four of us hurried up the main road, staying close to the shadows. A quick peek in one of the houses revealed a cluster of half-turned, sleeping together, all huddled up and glowing. They must all be inside the houses. This left the place with a very creepy ghost town feel. The villa sat on a hill. A large whitewashed brick gate surrounded it, with lights pointed outward. Alejandro sniffed the air before saying, I don't smell any guards on the walls. Cabron is too cocky to believe he is at risk of an attack. At this we located a guard shack connected to the big wall by the main entrance gate. We heaved vows atop it to set up his defensive position. As I handed up his grenade launcher, I said, "Time for you to earn a cool new body part, choir boy." Vals just stared at me with a mixture of boredom and annoyance. Think Jim Halpert from the office. The rest of us circled the perimeter to the back to scale the wall. Once I got over, I had my first good view of the giant villa, with its red roof, white stucco walls, lavish green, and multiple pools. Conrad was really living in style while the rest of the village slept in shanty houses. I was equipped with a full auto Glock 17 with a suppressor attached. Slung over my back was a heavy AA-12 auto shotgun with a drum mag, just in case things popped off. Alejandro was equipped with a silenced MP5 with 2 serrated machetes crossed on his back. With his MAV strength, he could chop off heads with ease. Mika was our support, equipped with a one-shot blooper grenade launcher and tons of grenades on her bandolier. "Conrad's witch will probably have the house warded," Alejandro spoke in a hushed tone as we huddled around him. "It would require too much power to cover the whole property with a warding spell, so I think we're safe for now." He turned to Mika. "You stay out here and jam her spell. If we have to make a fast exfil, you hammer the building with everything you got." Mika nodded and began setting up for her spell by producing pouches of materials and unfolding a board with runes written upon it. We gave her about 3 minutes before she began chanting softly. She waved us to carry on with our mission. Alejandro put on his ghoulish mask. As we darted around the pool, we came up to a locked glass door. The lock on the door popped, and the glass door slid open about 6 inches. Mika had managed an unlocking spell while jamming the witch's warding spell. She's a genius. In we snuck like shadows. The house was dark, but a low rumble of music was coming from the floor above us. We made our way past 2 giant pool tables to locate a side stairway. It was a skinny set of steep stairs with white walls sandwiching it on either side. We heard descending footsteps and loud talking. A tall Mexican man with face tattoos turned the corner at the bottom of the stairs while talking on his phone. Unfortunately, he turned right into Alejandro. Alejandro grabbed him quickly by the top of his bulletproof vest and stuck the MP5 to the center of the thug's head. It was only an instant, and the man didn't even have time to scream as 3 sharp coughs from the weapon annihilated his face. The phone clattered to the ground with a tinkle of shells while Alejandro just held him out like smelly garbage. He then slammed his foot down on the phone and walked around the corner to lay the dead man down in the shadows. It was all so fast and emotionless. A shiver ran down my spine at the thought of Alejandro when he was under the control of his cruel Mav master. "We go up," he said when we came back round the corner. "Don't dwell on it, Taylor. I need you on my 6 for this." I followed him up to the well-lit second floor. There was a common room bigger than my entire house back in Idaho. It had couches, statues, and multiple TVs blaring loud music. At the opposite wall was a long hallway with rooms on either side. Alejandro motioned for me to take position behind a couch. He fished around through a pile of remotes on an ottoman before finding the one he needed. He cranked up the volume on the TV to an unbearable level. Soon after, we heard yelling between 2 men coming down the hallway, probably arguing who was going to turn the volume down. Whoever lost the argument stomped down the hallway, cursing under his breath. He leaned over the ottoman to search through all the remotes. Alejandro peeked out from behind a love seat and fired 1 muffled shot into the back of the man's head. The man plopped down on the ottoman, very dead. Alejandro then turned down the volume on the TV. "Gracias, pendejo," came a call from a room on the right side of the hallway. I was amazed at how efficient Alejandro was. Now we knew what our next hostile would be. I followed Alejandro down the hallway. He cut off into the room to let out 3 quick bursts of his weapon, only to re-emerge back into the hallway just a second later. We stacked up on either side of the doorway at the end of the hallway. This had to be the master bedroom. Conrad was surely inside. Alejandro retrieved a grenade from one of his many pouches. It was a special grenade, a magical blackout. Instead of a brilliant flash of light, it let out a cloud of impenetrable darkness. All noise within the cloud was muted, and this in turn would light up a mouth like a Christmas tree, but they couldn't see anything from within it. Alejandro pulled the pin, but held the lever secure. He looked at me with his wide-eyed mask and whispered, "Kill everything in the room. I can't have you hesitate." I nodded back, and he popped the door open and tossed in the blackout grenades. Of course, it made no sound, so we waited a second before entering. In the middle of the giant master bedroom was the dark cloud of magic consuming a 10-foot radius in front of the bed. We scanned the room for anyone else, but saw nobody, so we focused our weapons back on the black fog. There wasn't a mouth glowing in the fog, but the carpet on the floor was moving back and forth, like someone was shuffling their feet inside it. The black fog should last around 30 seconds. We both waited for it to clear up, or for someone to come rushing out at us. My finger was steady on the trigger. About 15 seconds in, and the impossible happened. A cackling laughter emitted from the dark mass, laughing voices overlapping each other. The black fog blew away and dispersed, to reveal 3 women huddled together. The 3 elderly women had similar coarse black hair and beady eyes. They were all wearing flowing garments with multiple necklaces and bracelets. All 3 were slightly hunched over and grinning at us. These were our witches. Not 1, but 3 of them. "Tell the girl outside she can stop trying to out-magic us," the middle one croaked. We foretold Conrad of this attack on his life by the Amid's attack dogs. The right one squealed in a shrill voice. "You will tell me where he is, Bruja," Alejandro demanded, and all 3 of the women began laughing harder. "Don't try to charm us, you Amid bastard," the left one said. "I'll tell you where he is. He's in a bunker under the house." "Why would you tell us this?" I asked. I was getting a terrible feeling in my stomach about all of this. "'Cause, Taylor, you will die in this town regardless," one said while giggling. "We knew Amid would send sicarios when we killed their messengers. It was easy to focus the all-seeing eye on your organization to predict your next move. It foretold you will fail in your assassination attempt." At this moment we heard screaming and banging from downstairs. It was a tumultuous uproar. We later found out Conrad was not just feeding on his human traffic slaves, but turning more of them to store in his bunker. Alejandro turned to point his weapon down the hallway to the stairs, where noise was coming from. It was a good 30 feet away from us. "Kill the 3 of them, Taylor." I leveled my pistol at the trio and tried to get a bead on the middle witch's face. When my head was pierced with a sharp pain, it was like staring into a spotlight when you're having a migraine. No matter how hard I tried, my pistol kept jerking to the side or up too high over them. They cackled relentlessly as they walked to the side wall of the room. I could only keep track of them out of the peripheral of my vision, due to the blinding pain of looking straight at them. They knocked on a part of the wall to reveal one of those damn Scooby-Doo hidden door walls. You know, the kind that spin around. Well, they slipped away, and I heard a metallic clank of a locking mechanism locking it shut. I cursed aloud. "I got movement in town." Vaos's voice crackled over our headsets. "I'm guessing things haven't gone as planned." "No, far from it," Alejandro muttered. "Vaos, prepare for incoming hostiles. Mika, get ready to lay down suppressing fire when you see us," Alejandro commanded into his mic. The first of the half-turn breached the top of the stairs, A smiling and bloody male child. I couldn't pull the trigger when I saw him. There was still hope for him if we killed Conrad, right? I was so distraught, I didn't see the grenade in his hand. The child was halfway to us when a red burst jerked his hand backwards and he crumpled to the ground. That's when the grenade went off, showering the hallway with blood, rubble, and smoke. My ears were still ringing when Alejandro grabbed me and lifted his mask so I could see his eyes. "I will compel you if you do not fight, Taylor." Yeah, okay," I said, snapping out of my shock. We both turned back down the hallway to see 3 more rabid half-turned tripping over themselves as they crested the stairs. What looked like a man, a woman, and a young girl. All wore ill-fitting flak vests and helmets. Alejandro's shots stuttered them, but they continued to make ground on us. I waited until they were about 5 feet away before shooting from the hip with the auto shot, letting loose with an automatic burst of dragon's breath. Well, I have to say, if it wasn't so sad, it would have been beautiful. The 3 Mavs exploded backwards into multiple burning pieces. They'd been so close I could feel my face and hands burn. The hallway was now decorated with sprinkles of fire and burning body parts. Another group of half-turns were bunching up at the top of the stairs again. This time I could see they held some sort of ballistic shield. The half-turned were idiots, but their master could give basic mental commands when nearby. Alejandro shot the one carrying the shield in the foot, and it stumbled over, dropping it. He then peppered the group as they retreated back down the stairs, the one shot in the foot pulling the shield back with them. This bought us some time. Alejandro slung his empty weapon and pulled out both of his machetes, and I knew it was best not to fire until they got close. We were going to be overrun. I thought of a stupid idea, but it was less stupid than getting within melee range from these vicious hordes. "Mika, target the room with 4 windows, at the corner of the villa. Make us a way out," I yelled. There was a pause, then Mika replied, "Okay, 1 sec." "We don't have a sec, Mika," I said as the half-turn formed a wicked Congo line to shuffle down the hallway, holding the shield in front of them. They were 5 deep, with more and more gathering at the stairs. When they got close enough, Alejandro jumped out and pulled the shield down with all his might. It lowered enough for me to step forward and put the barrel of my weapon to the lead's half-turned chest. This resulted with deafening, repeated thumps from my AA-12, turning the hallway into a tunnel of gore and fire, decimating the line of attackers. My drum mag was now empty. I only had 2 8-round straight mags left. Alejandro jumped in front of me to challenge the new wave of attackers. "Stay away from the windows, boys," came Mika's warning right before the windows and half the wall exploded behind us. I tapped Alejandro on the shoulder and pulled him towards the smoking hole Mika had created. We both jumped down from the 2nd floor to the well-kept bushes beneath. Mika was there waiting for us, already popping smoke grenades to cover our retreat. Mika had a couple of special grenades developed by the nerds at Amit. The grenade would first shoot jets of a highly flammable liquid all over the area, before igniting as an incendiary grenade. This would blanket the area in fire, like a fancy Molotov. A couple of those were tossed at the ground below the hole we jumped from, catching the ground on fire and giving the half-turned a fiery death at the bottom. Mika fell in behind us as she dropped smoke and fire grenades. Alejandro was running down the side of the villa to link up with Vaus at the front gate. When we approached him, he was kneeling down on top of the guard shack, firing small bursts from his M60. "They aren't rushing the gate. They are all taking cover in the closet houses, like they're waiting for us." Vaus spoke with some confusion in his voice. "It's a trap. They will all be on us from behind if we stay here. They mean to swarm us. We need to get back to the van," Alejandro said up to Vaus with excitement and anger. A flaming half-turned was already screaming towards us from behind. Mika turned and loped its head off with a machete. We all turned back to Vaus. He nodded his head with a silent plan. So, they mean to force us down the main road to ambush and overwhelm us, Varus explained. I'll create a path through the backyards of the houses. We can just cut in through the last building to get back on the main street. Push through, or die, I said to him, and he actually smiled a little at that. With that, Varus stood up and let out 6 measured shots from his grenade launcher to rumble in the distance like thunder. He looked back down at us and said, "Okay, let's go." "Mika, get your blooper and blow a hole in the gates. We don't have time to climb it," I said with authority. Mika looked at me like I was an idiot. "We could just hit the big red button to open it," she said as she pointed to a box with a big red button mounted to the guard shack wall. In a hot minute, all 4 of us were racing down the hill towards the group of shanty houses. From up on the hill, I could see Varus's surgical line of destruction blowing fences, sheds, and garbage to form a pretty clear path. It'd be about 100 yards through the back of the neighborhood properties before we got to the last house. As we jumped through a blasted hole in the first hurricane fence, we heard the half-turn began screaming all the way down the road. They must have caught on to our plan. Looking behind me, I saw the Mavs from the villa racing down the hill behind us with reckless abandon. By the time we got to the second backyard, Half-Turned had begun bursting through the windows and doors to intercept us. Varus pulled a Rambo and began firing full auto from the hip into the houses as we staved past them. The sides of the houses exploded into rubble from the punishing onslaught of his bullets. Half-Turned were blown back through windows and doorways as soon as they appeared. But where one fell, another glowing bastard took its place in the chase, scuttling hungrily after us. We came to the last house. I'm going to cut a hard right into it and get back on the main road to our van. The van was about a quarter mile out from town. We could make it if we thinned the herd of bloodsuckers chasing us. Well, Half-Turned were already camping inside the house, probably having caught on to our plan. Alejandro was first in, slashing fiercely at the unarmored enemies, dropping 3 of them. I came in second, while Varus and Mika laid down suppressive fire from the back doorway. I cleared the small house quickly, exploding Mavs as they foolishly came in close to attack me. My last few shots piled 3 burning bodies in the front doorway, creating a makeshift burning barrier. But that's when I saw it, and my heart sank. Outside in the road was our burning van. It was attached to a tow truck by a chain. Glowing Mavs stood all around it. But then I saw something even worse. "Get down! Take cover!" I yelled to my team. Luckily, they didn't question me and dropped low as gunshots tore through the house. Human soldiers with automatic rifles stood behind vehicles, firing at us and shredding the front of the house. Alejandro pulled me behind him and grunted as bullets ripped into him. When the barrage finally stopped, we all laid prone, me covering the front and Varus covering the back. I didn't know how we were going to make it out of this dusty town. We were low on ammo now, and they could always send in waves of Half-Turned as bullet sponges. Well, this was some real Wild West standoff shit. We heard the clamor of excitement outside from the human soldiers. Alejandro and I peeked over the shattered windows to see what the fuss was about. The soldiers were pointing in the air at a black helicopter circling the town. The men looked confused and curious. "Oh, hell," Alejandro mumbled. "What?" I answered. "New baddies or friendlies?" "I recognize the clan markings," Alejandro said in a low voice. "It's the Toltec group, and we aren't supposed to be in their territory." Well, that's it for now, folks. Let's just say the Toltec group don't play well with others. I hunt reverse vampires. 700 in blood. The black helicopter buzzed the soldiers and half-turned Mavs standing in the road. Alejandro must have heard it before all of us humans and Feral half-turned because he yelled, "Shit, everyone get down." Suddenly the road outside the house lit up in a monstrous explosion. The force of the blast threw me back and caved in part of the bullet-riddled house. I was surrounded by upset dirt, smoke, and ringing in my ears. The ringing diminished, and I heard the rhythmic bursts of heavy machine gun fire and screaming. Mika and Vals pulled me up out of the rubble, their faces powdered white from the dirt clouding our vision. Alejandro was coughing and dusting himself off beside me. "So, not good guys?" I asked Alejandro, more of a statement. "No, not good guys to anybody," he answered back. "Mercenaries, mouths for hire, honorless." I looked through a hole in the collapsed entrance to the house. The Mavs and enemy soldiers were being decimated from machine gun fire from above. The vehicles were on fire, and so were the enemies surrounding the vehicles. It wasn't a battle, but rather a massacre. "What do we do?" Bowers asked, the flames burning outside, sending dancing shadows across him and Mika's worried faces. "We continue as planned. We get the hell out of here," Alejandro replied. "Reload your weapons. We are hoofing it from here." We all reloaded what little ammo we had left and filed up to escape out the back doorway. Vals was leading the group and was the first to step out of the back doorway. He froze and jumped back an instant later. He motioned all of us to stay out of the fatal funnel of the doorway. I quickly saw what had spooked Vals. Lines of green laser lights illuminated through the doorway and glowed brilliantly through the upset dirt and smoke. At least 4 of them. We were surrounded. We all trained our weapons on the back door, waiting for an attack. "Alejandro, Domingo, please lower your weapons," came a booming voice in a thick Mexican accent. "Her mistress would like to speak to you." Shit, Alejandro cursed under his breath. Mika looked at him, then looked back at me and Vals and silently mouthed to us, "What the f—" "Lower your weapons, hunters," Alejandro finally said. We did, but we were ready to fight in a heartbeat. The moonlight coming in from the doorway was blocked by a massive figure. In what the tallest and widest man I'd ever seen. He practically had to duck and shimmy in sideways through the doorway to get in. He wore a black suit and body armor like Alejandro's, except it was serrated and stacked like the scales of a serpent. He didn't carry a weapon, whether that be a sign of good faith or maybe the giant liked killing things with his own hands. Upon his head he wore a shining metal face mask mimicking the ears and snout of a wolf. It wrapped around his head, depicting a frozen snarl and sharp pointy teeth, with 2 glowing red slits in the mask for eyes. "Lobo, I take it your pack is the house surrounded?" Alejandro asked the hulking figure. "Yes, senor. Please wait here while my team cleans up," the wolf-masked giant replied. Outside, the same green lasers blasted the remaining half-turned and soldiers to pieces. The helicopter began a slow hovering landing in the center of the road, while dark-clad men emerged from the shadows to gather up the fallen half-turned, who'd been grounded by gunshots. I stared in amazement at the men who emerged from the shadows. I only counted 5, but they moved with the deadly grace of panthers. They'd finish off the downed soldiers, and throw injured half-turned into the blazing fire created from the explosion. I counted at least 20 bodies between the dead soldiers and Mavs. Some bodies in too many pieces to properly count. The giant wolf guarding the door put a hand to his ear and said, "Yes, mistress, we are coming out." He waved for us to follow as he stepped out of the doorway to begin his walk around to the road. We followed cautiously. 3 more black-clad ninjas appeared around us as we made our journey to the bonfire in the street. The helicopter had landed, and a machine gun-wielding ninja confronted us before we could get too close. He angrily told us to put our weapons on the ground. Alejandro nodded for us to do so, and we did. Then we all waited with anticipation as the helicopter's blades and rotor died down. A seamless black hatch popped open to create a set of stairs. Out stepped 2 figures, a voluptuous Mexican woman, clad in black with that faint telltale maverick glow. Her hair pulled back tightly in a braid to coil around her neck, like a snake. She walked up to Alejandro to look up into his eyes. She had dark eyeliner accentuating her sparkling green eyes. She was hot, but scary hot. I realized this was a common trope with mavericks. The other figure to exit the chopper was a skinny teenage boy, hidden within an oversized jacket and hoodie, his hands in his pockets and trailing slowly behind the intimidating woman. He just stayed in the darkness and looked at the ground. "What are Amit's dogs doing in Toltec territory?" the short, furious woman asked. Alejandro didn't reply at first, just stared back down at her. "I'm pretty sure you Toltec thugs know exactly why we are here. You probably have eyes and ears everywhere. Such a calculated response demands you have prior knowledge of our mission." Alejandro finally spoke, exasperation in his voice. The woman smirked, a cruel smirk. "I just wanted to hear your excuse, Alejandro, dear," she mocked as she ran a finger down his chest. "You are here for Conrad, the same reason we are here. Not for the same virtuous reasons of the benevolent Amit clan," she mocked. Alejandro shrugged her teasing finger away. "You would only come out to suit your own interests, line your own pockets." The woman gave a terrifying glare at the disrespectful comment, and I thought she'd strike him. The giant wolf-masked man loomed forward to stand within choking distance behind Alejandro. Well, I thought things were about to pop off. I was already planning my daring grab for my pistol on the ground. Baos and Mika's eyes darted around the area, also planning. But finally the tension was lifted as the woman gave a gentle laugh and a wave of her hand. "I guess we should thank you. The sisters told us of your assassination attempt, and we took advantage of the situation. You emptied the villa out of the half-turn so we can move in and extract Conrad from his bunker," she explained. "The witches work for you?" Alejandro asked. "No, they're just pragmatic enough to be on the winning side," she replied. "They knew the cash flow from Conrad was coming to an end and needed another avenue of income." By this time the dawn was beginning to break, the smoky night sky turning from flat black to a dark blue. I looked around the village at the ninja-esque henchmen, burning bodies and forming a perimeter of security around us. That's when I noticed the villagers, half-turned, stumbling around in the distance. I pointed to two half-turned, stumbling towards the light of the burning fire. "The half-turned are no longer being controlled. Someone's gotten to Conrad," I announced. The fierce woman gave me a look of disgust, before turning to look at the half-turned meandering towards us. "Ah, yes. Conrad must have been forced to sever his connection with them." She looked at her giant wolf bodyguard. "Lobo, kill them if they get any closer." "Ah, woman, they are freed from his thrall. They can be redeemed," Alejandro exclaimed to her. The giant wolf stalked over to both the half-turned, grabbing one and snapping its head in a grisly 360, loosening the spine enough to yank its head off. The other half-turned tried to put up a pitiful fight, swiping at the behemoth. The wolf just caught the hand to deliver a devastating jab, burying itself into the half-turned's face. The wolf lifted its limp body up to traverse back to the bonfire to throw its body into the flames. "We don't have bleeding hearts like the Amit clan. We don't sink millions of dollars into rehabilitation and therapy for abandoned half-turn," the woman chided Alejandro. Alejandro was bristling again and looked like he was on the verge of violence. Simultaneous explosions echoed from the inflamed villa up on the hill, smoke bellowing up into the pre-dawn sky. I noticed a black Hummer was kicking up dust trails on its way down to us, driving down the road towards us. "Here comes your old friend Conrad now," the woman said slyly to Alejandro. The Hummer pulled up beside the helicopter, and all the doors popped open in unison. More black-clad ninjas jumped out, escorting a man with his hands tied behind his back. They pushed him to his knees beside the woman to face Alejandro. The prisoner was a bald, clean-looking Mexican man, glowing slightly, the black snake tattoo stretching across the left side of his head. He looked up at Alejandro and spit to the ground. I didn't expect my old amigo to be working with the Zoltec group. I don't work with them, cabron. I came here to put you down like the rabid dog you are. Alejandro fired back. You were granted free will. You went back to being a slaver and a killer. That's enough moral grandstanding, the woman interrupted, stepping between the two arguing men. Let me tell you what the situation is for both of you. Alejandro, dear, you and your pups were caught operating red-handed in Toltec territory. That's no biggie because we used your little mission as a distraction to nab ourselves a rather large bounty. Someone put a bounty on my head? Asked Conrad. How much? Oh, not much, only 700, the woman answered. The new boss of the Zeta cartel wants all the old lieutenants back, dead or alive. You can discuss with the new boss the conditions of your new employment. Cortez smiled. What about this, Pandejo? He nodded his chin at Alejandro. Are we going to be co-workers again? Never, Alejandro growled. I refuse to be a butcher like you. But you were the best of us. You couldn't have been so good at killing if you didn't enjoy it on some level, Cortez remarked. Would you two please shut up? The woman said, rubbing her temples with her fingers. Getting Conrad was just a bonus. The real mark was you, Alejandro. It was a great opportunity to catch you in the open. Alejandro looked around. You wasted all these resources to catch a low-level bounty like me. I'm not coming back to the cartel, no matter what you say. Oh, the woman remarked. Your bounty wasn't to return you to the cartel. It was to deliver your head. We all tensed at this. Alejandro actually relaxed and rotated his shoulders, letting out a deep breath. Ah, I see. But I'll make you work for that 7 million. It's 700, the woman hissed back. The sentence hung in the air between all of us. The fire crackled, the sun was rising, and the tension between us was thick in the air. Then who'll do it? Alejandro asked, looking around, challengingly. Will it be you, Chucho? He said to the wolf-mouse man. Well, the wolf-man stepped forward and cracked his knuckles, letting out a low growl. Stop, Lobo, came a voice from behind the woman. Mistress La Salina, may I handle this disrespectful fool? Said the hoodie-wearing kid standing behind the woman. I almost forgot his awkward ass was back there. The woman half turned to look at him. Of course, Derek. It was always a pleasure to watch you work, Mistress La Salina said, stepping aside for Derek to step up to face Alejandro. From his close distance to me, I could see he was a pale kid, around 15 or 16 years old. He had dark blue eyes with oily blonde hair falling across his face. A small silver lip ring hung from his bottom lip. Are you sure you want to do this, boy? Alejandro warned. Don't call me boy, you bastard, the kid said back. I detest you self-righteous Amic clan. He lifted a skinny hand to point at the rest of us standing behind Alejandro. You all behave yourselves and don't interfere. You three may walk out of here with only a slap on the wrist if you're good. Oh, my blood boiled at the audacity of this scrawny punk. Alejandro just asked again, serious as a mortician. Are you sure you want to do this, boy? Sure, Pops, the punk said back sarcastically. He began to take off his hoodie to reveal his bare chest and wiry frame underneath. Even though the sun was rising, the boy's body still lit off a red glow. He threw his garments to the ground and smiled a mischievous smile at Alejandro. Alejandro stepped back from the glowing red adolescent. The sun finally crested the earth to illuminate all of us in orange light. The kid closed his eyes and held his arms out as if to embrace the dawning sun. He flew in a mixture of red and orange. Oh, it can't be, Alejandro stuttered. You're a child of the Thule. The punk opened one eye to squint at us. Now you realize you done messed up, he taunted. Now I know this was a lot of standing around and talking, but I couldn't leave you all hanging for long. I'll be back with the follow-up very soon. I hunt reverse vampires. Figure 8 strike. Duel. Well, I had no idea what that was at the time. Whatever it was enough to scare Alejandro. I looked at Mika, and she was as confused as I was, but Vaus looked absolutely pale. His face was one of fear. Alejandro quickly regained his composure and stepped forward toward the kid. My apologies, senor. I should have known from the aura of arrogance wafting off your Aryan features, Alejandro conveyed with a helping hand of sarcasm. Oh, quiet fool, the kid spat. I hated the moral grandstanding of the Reich just as much as your precious Amit. It was at this moment I detected the faintest hint of a German accent. It all finally clicked. Oh, he's a Nazi, I blurted out. Nazis were always the bad guys. I should have caught it sooner. Just couldn't get rid of them. There was a suspended silence as Alejandro, the kid, all the ninjas and the rest just turned to look at me. I decided I should probably keep my thoughts to myself for the time being. Reform Nazi, little shit, the kid said to me. You can't blame me for the brainwashing they did to me when I was young. It doesn't matter, Lasalina. I'll make a deal with you, Alejandro said, addressing the woman. I kill your fighter, and you let us leave. You know this world is too small for us not to cross paths again eventually. You take your chump change bounty and re-establish your rule in the area. We leave having completed our mission. No war between clans. Lazalina laughed. You overestimate your prowess and importance to your clan. I don't think Amit will go to war with Toltec group for killing one Sicario during an off-the-grid wet work mission. But, she tilted her head, as much as I despise cattle, it shouldn't be their fault you got them killed. She let out a melodious laugh. Amit may have issue with me killing off their pets. I agree to your demands, the boy interrupted. Lazalina looked at him furiously, but held her tongue. If you beat me, you and the cattle live. Herr Dreisan, this is idiotic, Lazalina said, waving her hands in a sweeping gesture at everything around us. We did all this for... Shut your mouth, you schlumpig woman, the brat screamed back, his red aura flickering about him in anger. Or should I tell your master about this disrespect? Lazalina cleared her throat and looked down at the ground, avoiding his stare. The red flames burning on him seemed to die down before he turned back to Alejandro. Order them not to interfere, Herr Dreisan commanded Alejandro, pointing to the three of us. Bullshit, Mika said. Put 4 on 4. We'll kill your best fighters and let the rest of you off with a warning. I saw Mika already had a razor wire wrapped around her robotic hand. The rest ran back into a spool on her belt. Mika, stop, Vaus interjected. Have faith in our teacher, he begged. We won't interfere. He spoke like he knew Alejandro would win, but I suspected something else. Vaus was afraid. Then let's begin, the boy said as he pulled 2 small scalpels out to carry in both hands. He pushed a button on them, and they began to glow a hot red. They're self-heating and cause burning damage. This makes them a good melee weapon against other mouths. It also allows me to get in close and experience every little detail on my patient's face. Do you want one? Alejandro swiftly pulled both machetes out from behind his back. He too pushed a button, and a low hum began to emit from them. He touched both together, and they sparked like live jumper cables. I have my favorites too, Alejandro said back. I tell you, Conrad began from his position on his knees beside Lanalisa, behind Herr Dreisan. I still hate you, Alejandro, but I kind of want to see a fellow brother from Nuevo Laredo teach this uppity gringo. Alejandro ignored Conrad and pushed in towards Herr Dreitzay. The boy deftly leaned back and forth out of the path of Alejandro's blades. He almost made it look easy, like Muhammad Ali doing a rope-a-dope in his prime. We all expanded outwards a couple of steps to give the dueling pair more room. Alejandro seemed to be getting frustrated with his nimble foe. He still hadn't landed a blow as he aggressively forced the tiny Nazi in a backward circle. Angry, Alejandro kicked a handful of dirt up in Dreitzain's eyes. Dreitzain froze for long enough for Alejandro to get very close to decapitating him. Dreitzain had to throw up a scalpel to block the swinging machete. Sparks flew and Dreitzain screamed as electricity arced through his body when making contact with his heated scalpel. Alejandro's other machete came across in an arc to slice off the hand of Dreitzain that he was using to block the first machete. Dreitzain screamed and stumbled back as his left hand tumbled to the dirt, still holding the glowing scalpel. Alejandro then took advantage of the boy's confusion and swung both machetes downwards in an overhand arc, meaning to dismember both arms from the boy's body. Dreitzain intercepted and sliced like lightning towards Alejandro's fingers on his left hand as he swung downwards. Those fingers flew off and the machete just bounced off of Dreitzain's shoulder, doing minimal damage. The other machete struck deep into Dreitzain's collarbone. Once again the electricity popped through the boy's body, but he wasn't fazed this time. This time Dreitzain stabbed and sliced Alejandro as his remaining weapon was still stuck in Dreitzain's collarbone. Alejandro was forced to release his remaining weapon to retreat from the fury of blows he was receiving from the scalpel. When he stepped back, I saw his gut was burnt meat. He had a slice across his face that popped a right eye and left glowing embers. I could smell the burning flesh, and for the first time I feared for Alejandro's life. Dreitzain yanked the machete out of his shoulder and tossed it aside. He began his slow stalk towards the weaponless Alejandro. Already, Dreitzain's left hand and shoulder were completely healed. "I'm already better, Pops," Dreitzain said as he rotated his shoulder. "Sure you don't want to trade up for one of my weapons?" Alejandro wasn't healing because of the burn damage, and his first machete was located behind Dreitzain. He saw him eyeing it, and stepped in its path to block it from Alejandro. But Alejandro had to get it, so he charged forward. With a combo of kicks and punches, Alejandro tried to knock Dreitzain off balance, but he kept jabbing and slicing Alejandro between dodges. Streaming blood spattered to the ground. Alejandro's forward momentum carried him when his body gave out. He stumbled forward to crash into the dirt face first in front of the machete he was after. Dreitzain just sidestepped him and let him fall. "Not what you anticipated, was it?" Dreitzain gloated as he walked away from Alejandro's body to turn on his heel and face him again. Alejandro and Dreitzain had switched places. Now Dreitzain was closest to us with his back turned, while Alejandro was further facing us, with Mistress Lazolina and Conrad behind him. The Wolfman Lobo stood off to the side, while his ninja completed the circle. We were all quiet. I could hear Alejandro grunting as he struggled to stand up, using his machete for balance. I saw him looking at us as we worried for him. I could see that he made eye contact with Mika on the other side of Val's, and I saw him mouthing something to Mika. She later told me she could read lips, and he had charmed her. He told her, "Bob, dark out grenade." Now the next 100 things all happened at once, so I tried to keep up. After 3 seconds, Mika's dark grenade went off and swallowed Mika and Vaus in a silent darkness. Lazolina saw these from across the way and screamed and pointed at Mika, thinking it was an escape attempt. All the ninjas and Lobo turned their attention to us. At the same time, Dreitzane was not so easily distracted, and he rushed after Alejandro, and Alejandro rushed after him, Alejandro's blade raised above his head. At the last second, before the two warriors clashed, Alejandro didn't press the attack. He swung too early, swiping down harmlessly in front of the oncoming Dreitzane. Alejandro then pivoted on his lead foot to turn in the opposite direction, towards Conrad and Lazarina. Alejandro's missed downward swing turned into the momentum of an upward strike. I saw Conrad's and Lazarina's eyes bulge as Alejandro came close. I saw a flash of movement as Lobo launched to protect his mistress. I saw Dreitzane pursuing right on Alejandro's heels, about to strike. All within the same split second, 3 strikes landed one right after the other. The first strike was Alejandro slicing off the kneeling Conrad's head, the machete cleaving most of Conrad's face off in an upward angle. Alejandro pivoted the upward momentum of the strike to swing back down and swipe back down behind himself in an attempt to hit Dreitzane with the same attack he just killed Conrad with. But Dreitzane was too fast and too close for Alejandro to complete the attack. The second strike was Dreitzane slamming into Alejandro while his machete was low, stabbing him deep in the cut, making him crumple inwards. The third was Lobo, coming in with a giant battle axe to chop off Alejandro's head from the side. Alejandro never had a chance to defend himself against his attacks. He made a gamble on a flashy maneuver and failed. But I saw the look of peace on Alejandro's face as it fell to roll beside Conrad's, his a visage of terror. I guess if Alejandro wasn't making it back, he'd make sure Conrad wasn't making it either. And everything popped off. Well, I'll be back soon with the next update. I've got the answers to a lot of your questions. I hunt reverse vampires. Nein zum Frieden. Well, it's been a while since the last update. I'll bring everybody back up to speed quick. So, let me paint the picture for you, from left to right. Well, I'll disguise my terror with a lot of dark humor. The stage is set in the middle of a dusty road with houses on both sides. In the middle of the road, you have the burning wreckage of the enemy soldiers and vehicles, sympathetic to the drug king Conrad. Pan further right to me, Mika and Vaus standing in front of the blazing wreckage. They've just been engulfed in a magical blackout grenade, while I'm standing outside of the dark bubble with a surprised and stupid look on my face. Further right is a rough circle of black-clad ninja dudes, 2 in front of us, looking very surprised with the blackout grenade obscuring their view. The rest of the ninjas are turning to look at us also. They formed a ring around 3 individuals that are fighting. Those 3 individuals fighting in the middle, well, the first is the Nazi prick Herr Dreitzane, stabbing Alejandro, my teacher, in the belly. And the third man is a giant black-clad ninja with a silver wolf mask. He swung in from the side to decapitate my teacher Alejandro, while he was being stabbed in the gut by Dreitzane. A little to the right, on the ground, is my teacher's head. Alejandro lying next to Conrad's also decapitated head. And a foot right is Conrad's kneeling headless body. Next to the body is the screaming dominatrix, Lazarina. And so that's the freeze frame in time. I told you last time things pop off. Well, they do, so better keep up. The 2 ninjas facing me had me dead to rights, with a fancy gun that I had never seen before. I was going to make a desperate grab for my pistol on the ground, but they would have shot me multiple times before I could even have reached it. I went for the pistol anyways, and they pointed their weapons at me, and right before I expected to feel the pain of bullets ripping me apart, they both screamed and jerked their guns to the side. I grabbed the pistol easily and popped off 2 shots, 1 into each of their melons. Now, I know that's not enough to kill the Mavs, but they'd be down for a while. Vaus, with unnaturally quick instincts, had already bear-hugged Mika and dove backwards with her, just as a magical hurricane-force wind blew the dust and flames into a flaming tornado between the black-clad enemies and us. On the other side of the flaming tornado, Dreitzane, Lobo, and Lasalina got another surprise. It was Lasalina who first smelled and felt the moisture on her clothes. Lobo looked down to see that Alejandro had pulled the pin on a flame grenade attached to his vest before he died. The grenade misted streams of highly flammable liquid everywhere. Dreitzane looked down at the headless body of Alejandro and let out a curse in German. Lobo grabbed his mistress and jumped away as the grenade switched to its second phase and sparked hot thermite. A white-hot explosion flared up the area, engulfing Alejandro's body. Dreitzane was inflamed as he jumped to the side, his fully engulfed body smashing through the wall of a nearby house. The magical whirlwind of fire created a good barrier between my team and the bad guys. The fire that had once engulfed the destroyed vehicles was extinguished, leaving black scrap metal for us to hide behind. I slid in next to Vaus and Mika, taking cover by the twisted metal. I peeked through the smouldering wreckage of the jeep to marvel at the whirlwind of fire. "Did one of you summon this?" I asked in amazement. "I didn't," Vaus answered. "Nope," Mika said as we both looked at her. "God, it's some sort of witchery," she added. "We have to get out of here," Vaus said as we all watched the swirling flames. "This whole operation has gone tits up." Loud female chanting was heard from the other side of the fire. And the fire froze, as if it was freeze-framed in time. Finally, it evaporated into smoke and blew out through the area, obscuring everyone's view. I could see that it was Lasalina chanting, hands clenched at her side, face furious. 3 of the ninja dudes were spraying down Lobo with fire extinguishers, while he was on his knees, huffing. "Damned witches betrayed us," she screamed. "Why do you save the Amit pups?" Well, I didn't know if she expected us to answer her, but I was just as confused as she was. I guess it would make sense that the witches were helping us. The ninjas acted like they couldn't look at me, similar to how I couldn't look directly at the 3 witches in the villa's bedroom. "Mika, look here," Vaus said as he pulled out a burnt hunting rifle. "It matches my 7.62 rounds. Can you do some repair magic?" Mika nodded and began drawing symbols in the dirt, laying the rifle in the middle. Vaus still had a bandolier of spare ammo, and so did Mika. That firestorm torched the 2 guys I shot in the head. An explosion from Alejandro's flame grenade got 3 more of them. "That big bastard is down, but so is Alejandro," I said with sadness as I scoped out the playing field. 6 more ninjas, the big wolf and the hot chick still standing, and that Nazi prick is missing somewhere. The enemy had fallen back to the cover of their Hummers parked by the helicopter, ninjas mounting the machine guns. Vaus was sighting in the newly fixed rifle, and I had a suppressed pistol. The 3 of us huddled behind the burnt-out vehicles, waiting, to be slaughtered. And to speak of the devil, Herr Dreitzane came kicking out of the collapsed house we'd used for sanctuary earlier. His entire upper body was burnt deeply, making him appear like a ghastly zombie. All his blonde hair was singed off, his chest a patchwork of black and red, blackened skin showing bloody red layers underneath. His lips curled in a terrible grimace. As he stalked out into the street, his aura burned a bright red, struggling to heal himself. He stared over at where we were huddled behind the wreckage. Steam flowed off of him as he clinched and unclinched his fists. "Oh, he's back," I stated to the others flatly. I'd never been so afraid of a teenager with a skin problem in all my life. His head was a smooth pale again, and his snarl turned into a pout. "You broke the rules. You interfered. I'm going to have to kill all of you now. No mercy from me," he screamed at us. "Bullshit. I was compelled," Mika argued. I don't think he cares, I said back. He was almost fully healed now, his blonde hair twirling in a cowlick. When, out of nowhere, Faust started unbuttoning his bandoliers and straps. Mika's eyes sparkled. I've got to do something, he said with regret in his voice. It's gonna hurt really bad. Then Faust pulled out a knife and put the tip to the pentagram tattoos on his chest over his heart. He looked at Mika, and I could see she was scared. I'm going to cut the blinding symbol apart. You have to cast a minor healing spell to reseal my skin when I say so, and you'll have to do it fast. He used a blade to cut his finger and handed the bloody blade back. Use my blood for the magic, he told Mika. She nodded again, but this time more confident. All Mika could do then was to begin prepping a healing spell in agreement. He looked at me, gave me a nod, like a "you know what to do" nod. He broke cover to walk out to Drytsane. Drytsane saw him and began stalking towards him. As previously stated, when I recount these stories, I may frame them in a humorous light, but that's just a coping mechanism. Because I was scared shitless, and I had no idea what to do. His student comes out to die, the brat screamed at Vals, the skin from his burnt lips flapping grossly. I'll take all of my anger out on you, little lamb. Oh, you will not, Herr Drytsane. Or should I say, Mr. 13? Vals yelled right back. This paused Drytsane's forward movement. I am Vals Barlow of the Templar Knights, Order Pukitium, and I am the heir of the House of Bloodraven. Vals looked past Drytsane to point at the Toltec henchmen standing further back by their vehicles. Your fight was with Conrad Avila and Alejandro personally. If you transgress any further, you will be starting a war with Amit, the Vatican, and the oldest, most powerful noble house in this world. You need to call it a day, and we both then return to our respective camps. We have learned our lesson. Toltec group is not to be trifled with, he stated with a calm that really impressed me. Oh, my Catholic Saviour, Drytsane stated sarcastically. Your people rescued me from my evil Nazi captors, then turned around to do the same experiment with you. He waved his arms dramatically at Vals. But unlike you, it didn't take me 80+ years for my balls to drop. Vals sneered back. I saw in Vals's face that he knew he'd lost his temper. He steadied his voice and said, Me and you will get the chance to see who's the better experiment. But not today. Right now, we are leaving. I saw Lazarina and Lobo whispering to each other. Lazarina finally walked up next to Drytsane, with Lobo at her side. We will withdraw with Alejandro and Conrad's remains. We don't fear Amit, but we don't want war with the Vatican and House Bloodraven, she told Vals sternly. Drytsane was not impressed. He reached out to touch the pentagram on Vals's chest, and Vals recoiled away from his touch. So, the church has made a deal with the devil. He looked up at Vals. You're supposed to be my better, a bridge to unite all of us. Herr Drytsane, you have fulfilled your contract. Whatever you do next is of your own volition, Lazarina said. Loba got the picture and stood between her and the glowing Drytsane. Both Lazarina and Lobo began walking hurriedly back to their men, Lazarina shouting orders. Yeah, I think I'll take that heart from you, Drytsane sneered at Vals. I don't need it for peace or power. I just want to hurt Mother. I saw Vals tense up and throw a punch to knock Drytsane 4 feet back. Drytsane snarled, and his aura exploded with red fire. Vals quickly pulled out his boot knife and ran it down across the pentagram on his chest, blood gushing out of the wound. Vals later told me he had to make it deep, he had to rip the skin enough for the pentagram's power to fade. The pentagram was placed upon him to dampen the powerful heart he had inside him. It was meant to let his body adjust to the power as he grew older. But now the seal was broken, and the immense magical power was let loose in his body. He screamed as a deep blood-red order sprung from his body. He threw his head back, and his muscles tensed to the point of snapping. The next moment, the awful power of Drytsane met the wild, overwhelming power of Vowers. And well, seems like a good place to stop for the next part. Oh, don't worry. I will tell you how we got over this mess, and I get to ask Vowers and Mika a few questions. I hunt reverse vampires when I was 10. Hello everybody. Well, I don't know how to start this. Mother always told me to sharpen my speech and writing skills. She told me it would be important if I was ever meant to bridge the gaps between worlds. Oh, this is Vowers, by the way. Taylor pressured me to tell my side of the story. But none of you want to hear my backstory right now. You want to know how we escaped from Herr Drytsane and the Tulsa group. I won't lead you around with cliffhangers like Taylor does. Oh, he likes the attention that gets him. No, I'll tell you about cutting the seal on my chest and the power inside me that began to eat me alive. I'm secure enough in my manhood to admit that I was mortified at the prospect of cutting the seal on my chest. I was never told to do this. I was told to never do this. I was told my body would be devoured like an ant falling into the sun. But that was years ago when I was a child. I was stronger now. I had to be in order to survive today and fulfill my destiny. You see, I don't have a normal human heart in my body. To explain further, I'd have to go back hundreds of years, so just take my word for it right now. The heart in my body was far more powerful than any Maverick's. It was like having a nuclear reactor in my chest. So I stood facing Drytsane in the middle of a dusty street in Mexico. Upon slashing a deep cut through my pentagram on my chest, I could feel the burning energy raging outwards from inside my body. I realized my human body hadn't adjusted to its immense power yet. I had little time, so I had to end this fight fast. Drytsane seemed to move in slow motion, his right fist arcing towards me. I threw my own right fist back at him. I intercepted his fist with my own, exploding his hand in a mess of gore. I delivered a brutal left hook to his face, catching his jaw and dislodging it off one side of his face to hang like a loose scrap of meat. Oh, I saw Drytsane's eyes widen as he stared at me, a look of terror over his young face. He knew he was about to die. Maybe he'd never felt the sensation before. But before I could smash his scrawny head, I first had to projectile vomit. I doubled over and cleared my stomach contents all over the ground. I was horrified to see blood and a few of my teeth in the sick puddle. I looked up in time to see a kick flying into my face. More teeth were knocked out of my mouth as I spiraled backwards across the dirt. As I skidded to a halt, I realized how much pain was racing through my body. Or how could my body ever acclimate to this? I felt a knee land in my belly and a punch splatter my nose across my face. I stared through blurry eyes up at the jawless face of Drytsane, forked tongue hanging out as he landed blow after blow down on me with his remaining hand. To be truthful, Taylor will think this is just me bragging, but his punches didn't even register through the pain that was resonating from inside me. His punches were, well, more of an annoyance. I reached up and grabbed him by his left shoulder and ripped off his remaining left arm like it was made of paper mache. Oh, Drytsane screamed, his forked tongue flailing wildly. And the armless bastard jumped back up to his feet and began stomping on my face. He must have been in the same amount of pain as me, but he kept his laser focus on killing me. 3 coughs from a suppressed pistol met my ear through all the pain. Holes appeared in his face and blew brains out the back of his head. He fell backwards to collapse away from me. "Do it, Mika," I heard Taylor scream. "Heal his magic chest thing." Taylor appeared over me, blocking out the sun, burning my blood-filled eyes. I felt him grab me by the back of my vest and begin pulling me backwards to the safety of cover. I could see his hand outstretched, pointing an empty pistol in the direction of Dreitzane and the Tulsik group. I could hear Mika fervently chanting, and the overwhelming pain of my magic heart boiling my body from within vanished as the pentagram was healed back, and I was just left with the pain of having my face almost caved in. I was sucking for air and began shaking. Mika ordered Taylor to roll me on my side. I coughed up my last remaining teeth and the rest of the blood and bile in my mouth. "Do what you can for him," I heard Taylor say. "I'm going to finish off that Nazi prick." Well, I was told later Taylor grabbed the only remaining rifle and approached Dreitzane to either bash his head in or shoot it with something powerful enough to obliterate the brain. Well, Taylor was intercepted by Lobo on Lazarina's orders. Lobo had the ruined but slowly healing body of Dreitzane slumped over his shoulder. Well, it turns out bullets to the brain slow down the healing in a Mavrib to a crawl. Lazarina yelled to Taylor that the fight was over, and Dreitzane was still useful to the Tulsik group. Taylor made the smart decision and allowed Lobo to take Dreitzane back to the helicopter. The Tulsik group peeled out and left immediately, leaving us stranded in the village. Mika desperately attempted first aid on me. The heart in my body would begin to hit me instead of hurt me now that the seal was healed again. After about 30 minutes, I sat up and ran my hand through my hair. Giant clumps of my dark hair fell out as I did. It was okay. Hair would grow back. But teeth? "Are you going to tell us what that was all about?" Mika demanded. I sat up and told them the little I could before violating my oath of secrecy. Well, first, I explained how Herr Dreitzane was the 13th of 20 kids rescued by Allied forces from Nazi scientists during the war. The Allies were led by a special contingent of Templar commandos from the Vatican. The children were injected with Mavrib DNA in the womb. The Nazis wanted to create hybrids that had the traits of ancient Mavrib without having to wait hundreds of years. They also wanted each child to have autonomy and be able to make decisions for themselves. Strange for the Nazis to want their child experiments to have free will, but they were supposed to be the new leaders of the Reich when they grew up. The Nazis had accomplished their mission with eugenics, but the children aged at a very slow rate. They stayed infants for 20 years. 80 years later, and Dreitzane was just hitting puberty. So obviously creating an instant army of hybrid superhumans was out of the question. I told them all this to tell them about why Dreitzane hated me so much. I was born a normal human. The Vatican adopted orphan children to raise as warriors in the fight against the unholy forces of invading realms, and I was one of these children adopted by the Vatican. I was born with a genetic defect in my heart. By the time I was 10 years old, my heart was already worn down and giving out on me. Surely I would have been dead before my 11th birthday. I received a heart transplant from an ancient being, a noble. This being was far older than any Mavrib and originated from another plane of existence entirely. She had been stranded in our world for millennia. Well, I can't tell you much about her right now, but I called her Mother, the heir to House Bloodraven. For centuries, the Church has been at war with magical forces and beings from outside our dimension. This war has saved a lot of lives, but also damned a lot of innocent ones. Mother made a pact with a more open-minded sect of the Church to give me her heart. Mother was tired of living and wanted to do something good with her death. She caused so much pain and suffering in her long life, She knew she could never atone for it, but, well, maybe I could. I would begin a bridge between the church and all things supernatural. I could lead to greater peace and cooperation between the many warring groups and clans. It would only take me around 300 years to adjust to the noble heart burning within me, and after being trained in secret for 8 years, the church finally found out about me. To keep me safer, deal was quickly struck with the Amit clan for me to join as a hunter for the next 4 years. And that's why Dreitsein just saw me as another experiment, another super soldier in league with Amit and the Vatican. The church's attempt to one-up the Nazis. Well, rumors of my existence had permeated all corners of the underworld already, and this had undoubtedly hurt Dreitsein's fragile ego. After I told my story, we all moved to one of the houses to take shelter. We'd already agreed to stay and recuperate for the day. If rescue hadn't shown up in the morning, we'd have to hike back on foot. It was around midnight when we hunkered down in a house lit by candlelight. Mika had found some canned food from before all the residents were turned into mavs and was heating them up in a fire pit she'd made on the dirt floor of the living room. I laid in a cot, still thoroughly exhausted, and Taylor stood by the window, watching the villa still smouldering in the distance. "Well, the witches helped us out there," he announced to the room. Mika turned to him, questioning, but I didn't have the strength to waste on him. "Well, unless it was you, Mika," he said. "Those ninja dudes had the drop on all of us when your blackout grenade went off. But they all spazzed out and act like, well, looking at us hurt them. The same thing happened inside the villa to me. When I tried to shoot the witches, I couldn't look or even point my weapon at them, the same way the ninjas acted with us on the street." "It wasn't me," Mika answered. "That's some high-level protection magic." "Why would these three set us up for an ambush, then help us survive the ambush?" I asked with my eyes closed. And the thing I heard next made me shoot up to standing position, ready to defend myself. "We just wanted the money, stupid boy," came an old woman's voice. My head pounded as I searched the room for her. Taylor spun and leveled his rifle in all corners of the room. "The boy with the pentagram is important to us, and you and this girl are important to his growth," came the witch's voice from Micah's lips. We both stared at her as her eyes rolled back in her head, and she shook lightly. She turned to smile at me. "So you will remember the debt you now owe us when we meet again, handsome?" Well, before I could think of what to do, Mika started shaking even more violently. Her pupils rolled back down, and she let out a primal growl. "Those bitches!" she screamed in her own voice. She immediately pulled a stick of chalk out of her pocket and started drawing a circle in the middle of the living room floor. "I'm going to put up a protection circle. You'll both need to pack in with me." And so minutes later, we all sat back to back with our knees up, within the circle of protection. The worst part was, we'd left the food out of reach of the circle. Taylor must have risked his own safety for the food, because after I woke up for my shift, our food had somehow entered the circle. I tried to stay awake with the two of them. If the witches were telling the truth, these two were important to my future. Maybe I needed to get closer to them. It's difficult because I always felt out of place around them, like I didn't belong. Well, I don't think I belong anywhere. Somehow I was supposed to be a bridge between different people and clans, but I couldn't even start up a normal conversation with my teammates. People seem so trifling and concerned with silly things in my opinion, especially Taylor. Taylor was always joking, always filling the blank spaces with the sound of his own voice. People liked him because he propped up their fragile egos, even though he was mediocre at just about everything he did. Well, I know he'll read this, and I don't care. The things I say are not out of spite. They're just factual observations I've made. I'm not writing this to make him feel good. I'm a man that would live for around 300 years, maybe 1,000, maybe even forever. I see things from a perspective other humans don't see them from. The answer to most problems was always the straightest path, the most brutal path. And I required no finessing and beating around the bush to get to an obvious solution. I had more time than any human alive, but I still had no place for wasting time. In conversations, I'd always end up insulting whoever I was talking to. Speaking was only useful to relay an order or get answers to questions asked. I had no time for pleasant conversation and pretending I cared what the other person was saying. So most of the time, I wouldn't say anything. People were too easily offended when I just wanted to get to the point. But anyways, I did keep falling asleep throughout the night. I tried to listen to the details of Taylor and Mika's conversation. Well, all I knew was Taylor was asking Mika about magic, specifically tracking spells. Taylor explained to Mika that a hunter had placed tracking spells on him and his late brother the day he was first attacked by Mavericks. Mika told him she didn't know of any spell that could consistently track a live human. Mika said she only knew spells to give the locations of stationary objects, or scrying spells that gave you the location of the targeted person the moment you perform the spell, but couldn't continuously track the target. Taylor began to get upset for some reason. So, how did Ma put a spell on us to keep track on us the day we were attacked? She knew we were in danger. She came to rescue me moments after my brother was killed. Mika was quiet for a while. We were all propped up against each other, back to back, and I felt her shoulders tense. You can magically bait an object or person, she said slowly. Me and Father would do it to animals when hunting shifters and skinwalkers. Magic attacks magic. Magically baiting something will cause magical creatures to take a greater interest. It pulls the fate of magical creators closer to each other. It's similar to being charmed, how magical creatures and those baited draw closer subconsciously, but you can resist it easier if you notice it. Now Taylor tensed. Well, she told me she used us as bait. I thought she just meant keeping an eye on us, assuming the Mavericks would attack us. But what you're saying is she could have intentionally attracted the Mavericks to us, so that she could kill them. Oh God. She caused the death of my brother. I'm not saying that for sure, Taylor. What makes you suspect this Ma used devious tactics that day? It was Mark, Taylor said quietly. He spoke to me on the night we performed summoning rituals out in the desert. He told me not to trust her. Well, there's a spell we can perform to see if you are baited, Mika answered in a measured voice. It's out of my league of skill, but we can find somebody. The spell's like a search history on yourself for any spells or curses performed on you. Well, this seemed to shut Taylor up, so I could sleep. He was moody and quiet for the rest of the night, and I wasn't complaining. We would make the hike out the next morning, and be picked up by Amit forces later on. Taylor and Mika never got to perform the spell they were talking about. As soon as we made it back, we were sent on another hunt back in the States. We'd be assisting Ma and her daughter, and Taylor would get the answers that he needed. Well, there you go. So, in our first episode, we looked at all the training of Taylor and all that entailed. And now we've gone on to his first missions, and it pretty much is set up for the next set of adventures, isn't it? I do so hope you're going to enjoy those as much as you did these. Well, I enjoyed them, and I hope you did as well too. Oh my God, another long one. That definitely is enough for me for this evening. Did you like that? Thoughts, feelings, comments in the comment section below the video, and I'll do my best as ever to reply to as many as I can. Oh, Till next time, very, very sweet dreams, and bye-bye. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams, and bye-bye.